How's it going, everyone? It's Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I was able to get into the Mecha BREAK playtest, and after a few matches, I can say with some confidence that this is a game that I'm really looking forward to. I was really surprised about how polished the overall experience was, and as much as I would like to show off the different menus and mechs, I'm only going to show gameplay in this video, because the chat for this game was wild, and it was at the bottom left of the screen, and some of the things that were being said were the most heinous, off-the-cuff things that I've seen in a while, and almost all of it had to do with the pilot's designs, and yeah, they were something. But let's talk about the playtest. So to kick things off, the playtest opened up with a tutorial, and here is where you can really see the influences of Armored Core and Zone of the Enders. I really like the design of the different strikers that you have, and that's what we're going to call the mechs moving forward. So just whenever you hear me say striker, I'm talking about all the mechs. The first class you're going to utilize is the medium attack class, and I think the tutorial does an excellent job of breaking down the mechanics. It provides a glimpse at what to expect when you eventually take on players. I know that from reading a press release about Mecha BREAK that there is going to be a 60 PvE VP mode in which you're going to fight giant mechs and fight other players, which I think is going to be amazing. But I'm hoping that they eventually introduce a mode where it's PvE and you get to fight these bosses with other players. It's kind of like a little story mode, because this whole opening tutorial boss fight was a lot of fun, and I thought that there was probably going to be more of that here in the playtest, but it was instead the battlefield mode, which is a 6v6 competitive mode. Once that opening section has been completed, you're going to be treated to a really cool cutscene, and then afterwards you're going to run into another tutorial that's going to teach you how to select missions and utilize the combat simulator. Missions in this game are basically just challenges in which the completion of these challenges grants you rewards. The missions I saw had 3 tiers to them, all of them specific to a different striker, and if you're pretty good with that specific striker in which you accept the mission for, you might be able to complete the 3 tiers in one match, which I think is pretty cool. The tutorial here requires you to select 2 missions and then queue up for a match. So before I was able to select any of the other sections of the menu, I had to complete 2 matches, which was fine because I found out that this game is a lot of fun and is very fast paced. The footage you're seeing is from my second match. I'm in a heavy brawler striker known as the Welkin, and I chose it because of the big axe. I'm a very simple person. This was actually the only time I was able to get into this map and play this objective. The rest of my matches were unfortunately cycling through 2 maps, so I'm going to try my best to show off those maps and the different strikers I played them in. For the most part, each striker has multiple functions. It's recommended that once you complete the tutorial and the 2 missions, you hit up training to learn what the different strikers can actually do. It can be really daunting to jump into a match without knowing their full capabilities, but in this instance it was fine because everyone in the lobby was also learning how to play, and it was also good for me because I could exploit the fact that I could get up close and personal with players who didn't know how to dash away, so I could take advantage of that. So I really liked the Welkin, and I really feel like it was one of the best examples of a striker with multiple functions. It really had good versatility. It wasn't just about getting up close and personal, trapping enemies, and trying to melee them to death. You do have a howitzer. You also have the ability to kind of stun lock enemies with these boomerang drones, which I thought was amazing. The first time I got to use these, I was stunned by how much damage they did, and how once they hit an enemy, if they are able to get multiple follow-ups, they will keep them in place, and you can do some devastating damage with them, which I thought was really cool. Now, I will say this, playing as the Welkin kind of showcased how melee can be a bit janky at times. So in Mecha BREAK, you are able to auto-lock on to an enemy as long as they're in range. The moment you tap the melee button, you are going to boost to the opponent and attack. But what's weird is that I ran into moments where my striker made multiple dashes before attacking as if it was auto-correcting the trajectory. And while I think it was really jarring to the opponent, it was really jarring to me as well. And I don't know if anyone else ran into that, but it was kind of confusing at times when I was circling an enemy instead of just going straight at them to attack, because I felt like I was missing opportunities to go up against some of these ultra heavy defenders in which you don't have the openings you think you do. And by that I mean with the ultra heavy defenders, they can prop up shields, and if you happen to strike while that shield is up, you will get stun locked. And if you get stun locked in a melee build, if an enemy comes up to attack you, you're pretty much screwed. I think that was my only gripe with Mecha BREAK as I made my way through the playtest, and that was just primarily toward the melee builds. During my time, though, with this game, I tried to play as many of the strikers as I could. Once the tutorial match was over, you are given enough currency to unlock every available unit. And when I say there is a striker for everyone, I really mean that, because I think there was like 16 of them. And my favorite was probably the Inferno, which is an ultra heavy attack unit. It comes equipped with this massive beam that can be absolutely devastating if utilized on trapped or distracted opponents. When you're using this in conjunction with a teammate who is playing a support striker and they can shield you, you are practically being set up for multi-kills. You feel unstoppable in the Inferno at times. And this kind of led me to wonder what it would look like with multiple Infernos on the field. Now, during the 6v6 mode, you can't do that. Once you have locked in your selection, it prevents other players from selecting that striker. But I do believe that when the 60-player mode drops, we're going to see multiple ultra heavies on the field. And that is probably going to be a nightmare to navigate. And it's not just the attackers that I'm worried about, it's the snipers. Snipers in this game can feel really overpowered. And in the right hands, it can be terrifying because you take a ton of damage and you can't see them. And some of these snipers have the ability to cloak themselves, which I think is a bit unfair. But the thing about this game that I really like the most is that it emphasizes team play, and every unit, regardless of class, is capable in combat. Seeing that all the different classes come equipped with multiple weapons and tools is a really cool feature. And it does take a while to get used to. And while I would want to say that every single striker is relatively easy to use, there are some that look like it will take some time to master. Gameplay overall in Mecha BREAK is really fast paced. Some maps feature environmental hazards, and it's going to throw off your targeting and will require the player to either retreat to an area where they aren't affected or just throw hands indiscriminately. Now, you're not going to do damage to your teammates, but it is really funny getting into like these areas where you can't really discern friend from foe. So I was just kind of swiping in any general direction to maybe see if like I was actually doing damage. It was pretty funny. I was genuinely surprised that there was no real hiccups while playing this game. I did not run into any real issues while playing Mecha BREAK, and I thought that was impressive. I was getting in and out of matches quickly, and overall it was just a really good time. But as this is a team game, you're probably going to run into some frustrations if players aren't working together. I did run into a few matches where no one wanted to escort the objective, and the objectives in this game tend to move faster when a player is attached to it. I want to say that out of every match, and generally outside of the domination objectives, almost all of the objective-based matches in this game were multi-tiered. For example, the escort objective requires your team to activate certain nodes along the path so that you can continue escorting the objective through. Those areas tend to become bottlenecks because both teams see that and they have to fight in those areas, and it can be very hectic and engaging. But once again, it all depends if you have a team that is pretty much aware that this is a team-based game. This is not deathmatch. So if you happen to get frustrated easily by having teammates that are not immediately trying to work together to complete the objective, that's probably where your frustration is going to lie while you're playing Mecha BREAK. Outside of that, I would say the only complaint that I have, and I would say like a legitimate complaint, and this is outside of me complaining about the multiple chain dashes while meleeing, is that you couldn't swap strikers during a match. I kind of understand why you couldn't. I really tried to convince myself that maybe you just couldn't do it because it would upset the balance. But here's the thing. When you get downed in this game, when your striker explodes, you eject. So now that it's gone and it's out of play, you should be, in theory, able to select a new striker. And that would make sense, because why would you have a similar one on standby? To me, not being able to swap to a new striker doesn't make any sense. Because I'm supposed to be a pilot who's able to pick as many different strikers as possible, so not being able to swap to a different one to help myself and my team doesn't make any sense. My assumption is that that's just a function of the playtest. Because the thing is, I'm not going to question why you can't have the same type of striker in a 6v6 scenario. I understand team composition, and the cost to unlock other frames is relatively low, but not being able to swap just feels like a weird design choice. Maybe I'm overthinking it. With that complaint aside, I really like what's here. Now, before I end the video, I'm going to briefly touch on customization. So it's not just the pilots and their appearances, it's also your strikers. And it's not just the appearances of the strikers as well. You will acquire parts, and that will be done through the battle pass and also through completing missions. And these parts will help buff your different strikers, which I think is great. I really hope that in the future they introduce weapons that we can kind of swap in and out. I think that would be a really cool feature. But what's here right now is really impressive. And overall, and I've mentioned this multiple times throughout the video, this is a really polished experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next, because I found Mecha BREAK to be a lot of fun to play. I was really enjoying the pace of each match, and I was also super impressed by the different strikers and their designs. If you happen to be a Armored Core, Zone of the Enders, or Gundam fan, you're probably going to geek out about what's here, because this game is really good looking. The details are really cool. I just had a really good time overall, and I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't see much coverage on this playtest. I found this on like a random TikTok, and then I said to myself, oh, maybe there's some playtests going on. Then I went on Steam, and you could just sign right up. It was like an open beta. I'm hoping that it gets advertised a little bit more next time, because I really feel like this is a game that everyone can enjoy. And I became an instant fan after this playtest, and I can't wait to see what's next. If you happen to have participated in the playtest, leave a comment below regarding your thoughts, because that is going to do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I am Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.